everyone. This is Dr. Dinah Dye on Returning to Eden, and today my co-host Jeff Morton is sitting this one out, and that's because I have a very special guest with me, my friend and soul sister, Bodie Thoene. How are you, Bodie?
Yeah, well, I'm great. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing really well. I know you're a bit under the weather, so we'll be kind to you, I promise.
Well, you know what? I'm the only person on the West Coast who hasn't had a cold, and finally I got it. So anyway, so if I sound a little bit closed up, that's what it is. But I think it's really important that we talk, and there's a lot to say and a lot going on.
Oh, there's no question.
Yeah.
Well, before we get started, maybe some of our listeners don't know who you are. I can't even imagine, but that's Bodie is my personal favorite author everywhere. You've got like 70 books, right? Something like that, or more?
I think something like that, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
And 35 million in print and in 30 different languages, and I don't know. To me, it's just remarkable. But your career is just stellar, and your gift in research and writing historical fiction with your husband Brock as a team. You want to say anything about that?
Well, Brock and I grew up together, of course, and we were friends before we fell in love. And one of the most awesome things that God has done is forged teamwork 2 blocks from one another as kids.
Wow.
And it's 2 are much better than 1, and you got the 3-fold cord when you add Jesus to that, and it's unbreakable. It's we've been married now 48 years, and and love what we do.
Well, you are a tremendous inspiration to so many. I have to admit I'm still partial to the Zion Chronicles and the Zion Covenant. Somehow I just got stuck there. I don't know, maybe when I first read them, you were sort of the only Messianic Jew I knew about, and just reading those stories about the founding of Israel, they've had a huge impact on me.
Yeah, those were also begun at a time before the surge of anti-Semitism, before things became so backwards, and many of the people that we spoke to and interviewed, they saw how it grew. They saw what happened in Germany from the Weimar Republic, from being a republic that was like unto the United States of America, and how that then devolved into something that was so unbelievably evil. And so we had first-hand accounts from those folks.
So I know you and your family lived in London for a while, and that's where you met a lot of these people that you were able to do your research. Can you talk about that for a bit?
Well, we lived in London about 12 years. We, of course, still had a home here in the U.S., but we have 2 sons that went to university in London at the American College in London, and we would bring college kids from the Master's College to London for summer study, and so we would, we teach them about research and teach them about writing and history and literature, all packed into one dynamic summer. But the amazing thing about it was, Dina, we would get in a taxi cab, for instance, and just begin a conversation with the driver, and something would trigger him, and he would then tell us what happened in the war. Mm-hmm. And this is in late 80s into the 90s. And so these people were very, very active, middle-aged, and had memories that you couldn't get from a book. And, one of the things we would do with our students is take them into the Imperial War Museum, into the archives, which were photographs and accounts that no one had ever looked at, because you send out a war photographer, for instance, and he takes 100 photographs, and maybe one out of 200 or 500 actually gets in the newspaper, but they would archive those things. And so we would be able to see, the photographs of people and places and events that nobody had ever seen before. And one of the things that comes very clear is people taking shelter, in the underground, in the tube. And I remember a picture of Orthodox Jewish man and woman sleeping next to one another in the tube, holding hands, very elderly couple. Those kinds of things that you could, oh my goodness, they just were so poignant, and it showed you that no matter where people escaped to, there was still huge danger at that time,
right.
And the whole world had erupted with it. And so we were able to not only have visual things that no one in the world since World War II had ever seen, except maybe the photographer, but then we were able to hear those personal stories, and one thing led to another, to another, to another. And it was quite an experience, and the guide, our guide, was the Holy Spirit, who would just say, just have a conversation here and talk to this one there. And so we got a very, very personal and deep history on many accounts of things that happened and
you guys are marvelous at taking those stories and turning them into these yarns. You paint pictures in your writing, and it just comes alive. You can tell reading your books, something dramatic has happened in your relationships with people and how you're communicating them to everyone. To me, that's just been such a blessing, because those books, Zion Chronicles and Zion Covenant, so capture the time. Those are the books, where I stayed up and read the thing the whole night because I couldn't put them down.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Well, I think if you start with Vienna Prelude, the shocking thing is now, and this is, at the time we wrote them, Dinah, they were about something that happened in the past,
right? And
now they apply to what's happening in the world right now. The anti-Semitic attacks in 2018, I think, are up in the 80-something%.
It's unbelievable.
There is an unleashing now, and yes. Brock and I have talked about this. I really believe, because it was so demonic, and I think you can attribute this to a personal evil against the people of Israel. There was a personal, focused, adversarial evil that wanted to destroy the Jewish people. And I believe now that so many of the people who were inhabited by evil at that time have passed off the scene. I think we're now seeing a renewal. The spiritual forces, the demonic forces, have found new places, new people to inhabit.
Yeah.
And so
how about in our Congress?
Yeah.
Right? That Ilhan Omar, unbelievable. This is a congresswoman speaking like this, in league with Louis Farrakhan and
exactly.
Yeah, it's frightening.
Yeah, and she does this with a smile. And one of the things I posted on my personal Facebook, not on the public Facebook, but the personal Facebook, was a comparison between Omar in her, all you can call it is an attack of Abrams, who is Jewish.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Elliot Abrams,
Yes, Elliot Abrams. And she personally attacked him and said, when he said, "I would like to answer that," she said, "That was not a question. You can't answer it. I want a yes or no. Do you think the this massacre that, happened by people trained by the U.S. Do you think that was okay? And I watched her smile as she attacked this Jewish man. And I thought to myself, where have I seen this before? And what I rediscovered was the interrogation of Judge Roland. No.
Back.
I went back
Yeah.
into the 40s and back into the Nazi archives, and I saw the trial of the conspirators who had tried to assassinate Hitler. And there was this Nazi judge by the name of Roland Freisler. Oh, my goodness. Oh, if you look at that interrogation, the pattern is almost identical. You could lay on the words that Freisler, who was the hanging judge, who was one of the most evil puppets of Hitler, and his word order and the things that he said to these people, it was like seeing it all over again, to watch this encounter between Omar and Abram in our own Congress, in a committee where they were interviewing Abram. So I posted both of those. I posted the video of Freisler and his pack of those people who were trying to free Germany, and this woman Omar, who's now sitting in Congress and is virulently anti-Semitic.
Yes.
Virulently.
Yes,
she's not. There's nothing. There's no way that you can tone that down when you look at her and listen to her speak to this Jewish American, Elliot Abram. It's really actually frightening if you see the parallels.
Well, we're past the point of couching, hiding, anything. Everything just seems to be out in the open. I suppose there's a certain advantage to that. I did want to ask you something. Going back to the Weimar Republic, it seems to me that period in Germany was a period of just cultural depravity, was it not? Decadence.
It was, yeah, and a lot like what we see here in the U.S. There was just
and into that vacuum we get Hitler.
Yes.
So what's the question going ahead? Because we are living in a time of total cultural depravity.
Yes, we are, and it is manifesting differently, because the devil has a real way of twisting, so that you have, for instance, the stuff that's coming out in the Oscars. I think the favorite is just one movie that is full of it's just depraved. I mean, it's beyond porn and into depraved porn is what it is, and it's up up for Oscars. And so you look at this stuff and you think to yourself, how did we get here? I mean, in my early years, I worked for, John Wayne and men of great integrity in the film industry. And Duke said at one time in, I think it was 1972, when we went to the rating system for film, he said, before this moment, he said, this is a real moment in film history, because before we go to the rating system, all films are supposed to be family films. You can just take just about anybody, to any movie. And now we have crossed a line where things that were considered X-rated movies in, say, the late 70s are off the charts. It's the stuff that is, you can't even rate this stuff. It's so vile. And these are the things that are up for Oscars. It's, we've gone past the point of just simply depraved and into Genesis 18, Sodom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you said that, because I think it was about a week ago. I think about the cultural morass and where we're headed, and this sort of thought dropped into my head about the motion picture industry. I guess from about 34 to 54, somewhere in there was a pretty strict set of guidelines, moral guidelines, and the Catholic Church was sort of the arbiter, making sure that the movies that came out were, as you said, family friendly. And I just felt like the Lord was saying that was a pivot point when the church pulled out of any sort of purview over the movie industry. That was a pivot point. Like Roe v. Wade was a pivot point. That was as well. And then the moral decline, kind of the nail, because Hollywood, the influence of Hollywood on our culture, I mean, knows no bounds.
Unbelievable, and they are so unconnected to real people, and what they're doing is influencing our kids and our grandkids into the next generation. I can note, having been there in the 70s and late 70s, that the language that people used at that time, and I'm not talking about Bat Jack Productions or John Wayne Enterprises, I'm talking about just in general in Hollywood, was pretty rough and not anything that I was used to. I mean, I was a pretty provincial young woman at that time, and so I had never heard people use the F word 5 times in one paragraph. and we were already there, but it hadn't yet come into dialogue. Now, here's something really interesting. Roe v. Wade and the rating system of movies, from X, R, PG-13, PG, to just general audiences, came in the same time, the exact same period of time.
Interesting, and very interesting.
Both of those things, which, of course, my boss considered just a moral travesty within the motion picture community. Both of those things began to happen in the early 1970s. So we see the shift right there, right there, and it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. And it's the old boiling the frog metaphor, But when we apply that then to history, which is what I think we need to do, the depravity that was a part of of Germany and the Weimar Republic is parallel. What was going on in Europe, what was going on in Germany, is the descent of the church, the stepping back of the church.
Yes.
From all events, from everything. It's just kind of let people do what they're going to do, and we have a sort of religion by this is where I was raised and where I go. And the church stepped back and became apathetic, and people became apathetic. That is exactly what has permitted all of this to happen, Dina.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. The church is MIA in the culture. And now it's not even MIA, it's embracing the culture.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so we're watching, for instance, I guess the United Methodist Church is splitting, I guess, between people who embrace liberalism and immorality, and people who were maybe raised as Methodists in the South who say, no, that's not who we were. And so it all comes down to a personal relationship with Yeshua, and that's what we see in the Bonhoeffers and historically in Germany.
The Niemöllers.
Yeah, the Niemöllers, people who stood up and said, if we don't turn this around, we're going down. And, of course, the Weimar Republic did that, and they oh, man. Am I just talking too fast?
No. I'm just sitting here fascinated.
My mind is just so full of, like, the Jusse Smollett thing. Okay,
yes.
Can I
yeah.
give you I'm going to give you an example.
Go for it.
False flags that happened in the Republic of, which had a constitution like the United States, in the Republic of Germany, Weimar Republic. The Nazis had a 1/3 share of the German Parliament, and they made alliances with extreme left. Okay, the National Socialists, which is Nazi Party, made various alliances to vote a certain way with extreme left, and then there were just Christian conservatives that, like we see in our Congress. I hope these parallels are maybe shaking people up a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the way the Nazis took power is they set up secretly, quietly, and we have a quote from Goering in which he admitted over a lunch celebrating Hitler's birthday that he is the one who orchestrated an event so horrific that it pushed the entire country into the Nazi camp. And that event was very early on. It was the burning of the Reichstag.
Yeah.
Which is, it's the equivalent of somebody burning down the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. But they presented it as the Nazis, deep state, orchestrated that. They did
right.
it, but they blamed the communists. And so all of a sudden, the entire country is in an uproar. They blamed the Jews. They said that it was the Jewish communists that burned down the Reichstag, and oh my goodness, within 2 weeks of that false flag event, Adolf Hitler was elected Chancellor of Germany. And so by false flag, they pushed people into believing that there was a threat, and they, took over. The Nazi National Socialists took over.
Well,
go ahead.
It's interesting that the threat, yes, certainly against the Jews, but also against the communists, because in reality, they're just communists. I mean, there's no difference between a National Socialist and communism. Let's just be real about that.
Fascism and communism are the same thing.
Exactly.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So interesting that's where they, that's where they put the blame.
Well, their goal was to put their own Obama or Hillary Clinton at the head of the government. That was it. It was a soft coup. It was a coup by vote. And they managed to take over the country then and legislate. This is the thing that is so freaky. They legislated the deaths of millions. They legislated the overthrow of people's personal lives, of business, of even being able to move out of Germany as a Jew.
Right.
You couldn't do that without giving them everything. And what we're seeing right now is a push, a move, an anti-Semitic movement within the Democrat Party that's they narrow their eyes and say, what can we take? How can we take these freedoms?
Right.
And that's exactly where we're headed. Right now, we are just on the cusp of Germany in 1932 or 33. And it's
consider
for those of us,
the same thing's happening in Israel. I mean, the left-wing Jews over there, functioning as an extension of the Democrat Party over here, are doing exactly the same thing to Netanyahu.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to just quickly, you talked about legislating death. Well, how is that any different? And we've just legislated the murder of, 330,000 babies per year since 1973. And of course, as we're recording this, yesterday was the day of mourning, and I hope many of you were praying and crying out to God for mercy. But we now have 4 states, New York, New Mexico, Vermont, and Virginia, in which you can basically abort a baby like 2 seconds before it's a healthy baby, before it's going to be born, and then even questionable after the baby's born.
Yeah. I did a little bit of research on that, and my question is, what's the difference between injecting a living child in the womb, really at any stage, but injecting a full-term baby in the womb with a lethal injection and killing it? What's the difference between that and what the Nazis did was to inject babies with a lethal injection or drown them? Did you see the reference from some Planned Parenthood person who said, if a baby's born alive, we just drown it in some solution?
I did see that.
And I thought to myself, I just saw that one and saw it. But I'm sorry, my clock is...
Well, now we know what time it
is. Yeah, we know what time it is. Yeah, it is. It's the 11th hour.
Do you know in our state, New Mexico, the solution that you use as a lethal injection on animals is forbidden, but you can use it on babies? I mean, that's where we've descended to.
That's what we have descended to, and it needs to be turned around because there is no difference. There's no difference. I don't care what anybody says. There is not one shred of difference between the Nazis who murdered babies and the baby killers of this day in our own nation and the politicians who are voting for this. There's no difference between them. There's no difference between what happened in the camps and what these people are now legalizing. It was legal to do it in Germany.
That's right.
And here we are.
And
so
here we are.
Historically, here we are.
So, our logical conclusion, is, are we going to end up with a major civil war, bloody civil war in the United States?
Yeah, I don't know. I suppose because Nazi Germany also took they took, all weapons. And, that's what people are working toward. And they're also the perversion of our Constitution. The fact is that's what the Democrat Party is working toward, is the perversion of the Constitution. I'm standing back, watching all of this happen, and I have no rooftop that I can stand up and shout, everybody wake up, shake off the spirit of slumber, because we are on the verge of the most massive legalized slaughter that it surpasses anything that happened in Germany. I mean, we've already, as far as the blood of the unborn, we have surpassed the numbers that have been killed in the Holocaust. The difference is that we had people who were, sentient and aware of what was going on around them, and these are just innocent babies, innocent children in their mother's wombs. And it is the frightening thing is that we see the women, the mothers, who are saying, okay, let's do this. I want this. I want to kill my own child. And it's so, back to what we originally talked about. I believe that what we're seeing is a manifestation of a profound evil that does resurface from time to time throughout all of history.
Yes.
That is, you can go back and look in the Bible and you can see the worship of Baal and the death of newborn babies and even, beyond that. And this is something that historically shows up from time to time, and we're living it now, and in an extreme manifestation of evil and legalization of evil.
Well, and it's just the pattern of what tyrants do. You know, they, of course,
yes,
they confiscate guns in order to, you know, have their way. But, I mean, my area, of course, is more in the ancient Near East world, but the pattern of what dictators and tyrants do is exactly the same over and over and over again. We just have to look at Venezuela as a great example. Those of you who read the news recently, they've been trying to get humanitarian aid, food, etc., into the country, and Maduro has just prevented it, burned the stuff. I mean, those people, they say, have lost like 24 pounds on average per person in Venezuela in the last year. They have only enough food for one day. And that we look and we see this is exactly where the Democrats want to take us. And because in their heart, you know, this desire to rule and control and beat back the masses, to exalt the elites and take care of, you know, themselves at the expense of the folks. I don't really see a whole lot of difference going on here.
No, there's not. And OAC and her, you know, green power. There is that group, and the Bernie Sanders of the world who say this time socialism, communism is going to work. But it is the responsibility of the church, of the messianic community, to get active, because if we are silent, we're going to end up with another Niemöller quote. You know, they came for, you know, you can go down through the list who they came for. And in the end, it's going to be you, it's going to be me. And the horrifying thing is to see the apathy of the midterm elections. Has opened this
floodgates of hell.
And we say, you know, pray. But God says you can't just pray. You are me. You have the Spirit of the living God within you. And if you do not act, and if you don't fight evil actively, which in this beautiful, wonderful land, we have the privilege of voting. We have the privilege of speaking for now. Now, you know, that may go away if we don't take advantage of it at this point. But I'm telling you, I cannot warn strongly enough. And you know, people say to me, "Gee, you're really courageous for speaking up." And I say, no, I'm really not. I'm just saying, it is. There's a little bit of fear that if I do not speak out, it's going to be too late. And so every single one of us needs to get active. We all need to, you know, write our senators, our representatives, and say, "I'm not voting for you, honey. If you vote for, you know, whatever it is that is so immoral." And I think at this point, Dinah, what we're looking at is the lives of the innocent, the most innocent among us, the citizens that are unborn, and the desire for the Democrat Party to have open borders so that they can flood this country with people who will then vote for them. It is once again, it's a technique. It is a design to take this country over, and there can be no other explanation for it. What, you know, we're talking about, you know, the protection of our borders. What's the downside of having a barrier? There is none.
Because all of them in Congress have barriers around their houses.
Exactly. Yeah. But for this country, this is like nothing we've ever seen. I mean, I just saw it.
In the ancient world, you know, when they built their city, every ancient city built a wall around it. What for? To protect the citizens from foreign invasion. I mean,
exactly.
Pick your Sumerian city, and that's what they did.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm out in California, and
you poor thing. Of course, I'm right behind you.
I know. Well, let me. I put this up every once in a while, but I want to define something for your listeners. Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, her 12th district is only the boundaries of the city of San Francisco. Only. That is the 12th district of the Congress. Yeah. That's her entire district. Okay, now within that city limit, which is a sanctuary city, there are 55,000 homeless on the streets, living on the street. 55,000. People defecate in the storm sewers. There is disease. People shoot up drugs on the street. Crime is rampant. I mean, the place is. John Stossel did a video of it.
I saw that.
And published it. It is worse than a third world country, and that is Nancy Pelosi's vision for America. San Francisco gives people, the homeless, money every month. People flock to that place, criminals, illegal aliens. People go right into San Francisco. And I went to school in San Jose, and Dinah, you know San Francisco.
Yeah, I was born there.
That was your hometown, girl, so you know what I'm talking about.
And, well, look again, the jewel of the West Coast.
Yes.
And then we see the same thing. Venezuela was the jewel of South America. And
yes,
these policies totally destroyed both.
Totally, yeah. Yep. So that's where we're headed if we don't, as as people of God, if we do not stand up. This is what we're headed for. And here's something else to send a little shudder. Nancy Pelosi is next in line after Pence to become president of the United States. If something happened to Pence and something happened to our president Trump, then Nancy Pelosi would be president. And does that not make you shudder? Because she speaks only for San Francisco. Only for San Francisco. 277,000 votes as opposed to 63 million votes for the current president. And so, you have we got something going on here that's profoundly evil and very, very, very real. And we all need to wake up and do something about it, or we're walking down the path to legalized murder. We're already there in some states.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Well, I think and it'll be good for us to kind of talk about some solutions we could get depressed.
Yes. Well, yeah, we said it, yeah.
But I do want to, and I don't know if you saw this, somebody passed this on to me yesterday. It was a 3-minute clip from a pastor, a preacher, and he was sharing the story about how, I guess it would have been the early 1900s, there was in the Hebrides in Scotland, particularly the Isle of Lewis, was a revival that started from 2 decrepit women who couldn't even leave their house and go to church. So they would have they would have meeting in their home, and they prayed and prayed, and this one young man gave his life, his heart to Jesus, to Yeshua, and his name was Donald, and he ended up helping the pastor, and the thing just grew and took off. Well, one of the niece of the aunts, or she was the niece of the 2 ladies, her aunt. Anyway, she emigrated to the United States and married. She married this man. They had 4 kids. Well, it turned out that this woman, the niece of one of the women in this revival in the Hebrides, her name was Marianne, and her husband's name was Fred, and the 4 kids, the youngest of the 4 was Donald Trump. And the Bible that these women used in their home to bring about this revival she sent over to Marianne, and that Bible sits in the White House. And we can all agree this is no accident for such a time.
Accident.
The Winston Churchill for us now. Would you agree?
Yeah. Yes, I really believe he is. And Churchill had tremendous opposition. I don't know if you saw Their Darkest Hour, The Darkest Hour, which was a phenomenal film.
Yeah, excellent.
But you can see the disrespect that Churchill received from even within his own party, and because he had been saying, "Wake up, wake up, wake up," throughout all of the 30s, and then suddenly war was upon them. They gave this to him to handle. But excuse me, Trump is the same kind of leader that he's disrespected, on so many levels, and yet he is the man that God has chosen to stand up, and we need to stand beside him and support him.
Amen.
As he tries to support our country and defend our country and defend life. That's a biggie.
It seems that huge. He, like Churchill, has been raised up to guide us through what, not World War II specifically, but through the culture war that we're in. Doesn't it seem like that? I just
yes,
get that
it does.
sense. Yeah. Well, one of the things I do want, I think we have to look at where all this comes from. And in my mind, it can all be reduced to the forces that want to destroy the family and the forces that want to exalt the family. And the family is a threat to the state.
Yes.
And that's the key here. The traditional family is a threat to the state in terms of morality and everything else, but especially morality. And so the state has launched an assault that's really gone on for almost 100 years since Woodrow Wilson. All the policies of the state is to make the family a victim and to destroy it so it doesn't stand in the way of the growth of the state. Because the growth of the family means freedom and the growth of the state means enslavement. I do think we can reduce this down to that.
Yeah.
What do you think?
And I really agree. And historically, again, looking at Germany in the early 30s into the war, the kids were taken from the parents as far as the education is concerned. When Hitler became chancellor, very, very early on, kids then went into their classrooms, and instead of the cross on the wall, there was a picture of Hitler. Right. And so they removed the spiritual significance of education. They took it out of the schools entirely, and they replaced it with a secular God. And we see that kind of thing happening. I mean, when we were kids, you said the Pledge of Allegiance and you sang every morning, God Bless America or our national anthem. Not so anymore. And there is there's a sense in the country now that anything that is of God is a bad thing somehow. Yes. That this is something that we don't want our kids to understand, or we don't want to even have that discussion within our classes. And again, that is a legalized secularization of all of society. And
and it's the family that brings order to everything.
Right.
A stable family is the foundation of any culture, and it brings order. And without it, it's chaos. This is I totally believe. I mean, the advocating of homosexuality and gender stuff, and and back in the welfare policies to keep the husband out of the home. They were all designed again to destroy the family. Interesting statistic here. Well, I don't know if it's a statistic, but did you know that in Europe, Macron, French president, no children. Merkel, Chancellor of Germany, no children. May, Britain, no children. The Italian Prime Minister, I forget his name, Gentiloni, no children. Holland, Rutte, no children. Sweden, Löfven, no children. Luxembourg, Bettel, no children. Scotland, whatever his name is, no children. Think about it. Hitler had no children.
Yeah. No children.
Isn't that interesting?
Wow, it is. It is interesting. And I'm of the spiritual school that says everything means something, and everything is like this is significant. So you look at that and you say, these are people who have no personal experience
exactly
with the love and the compassion,
and they're running countries.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's really true. And you look at the women who are now in Congress, who are
yes.
without compassion toward infants, without compassion toward the most vulnerable among us, and you can see a connection there, that there's just something that has been cut off. And this is a spiritual thing. And I want to go back to what you said about Trump's great aunts in the Hebrides and the fact that there was a great spiritual renewal and that he holds that Bible. That's significant.
Yes.
That is really, really, a powerful story and a true story. I really believe that those who think they can do nothing can pray, can open their scripture and read, and as they read, they can say, I am claiming this power for our country. I am claiming this revival. And we can, by prayer, change the world. If we can't do anything else, that's still the most important thing we can do, and it's where we all need to begin. But then going forth, we do need to be active in, supporting all pro-life candidates and in repudiating those who do not have a sense of the importance and the sacredness of life and families. We need to be involved, guys, or we're gonna lose it. And that's what history teaches us. That's where we're at now. But prayer, yes, prayer, Dinah. And we need to be the Hebrides group who says, okay, Lord, today I am going to give myself and everything I do to asking you to give wisdom to our leaders, that those who love you, and maybe even those who don't quite get it yet, that you will reveal yourself to them in dreams.
Amen.
That you will show the evil ones that their end is not eternal life. And oh my goodness, can you believe the old people in Congress who are voting for death, who are voting for the end of this? I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, how much longer does somebody who's 80 years old and a senator voting for death, how much longer have they got before they come face to face with Yeshua HaMashiach, and he says, you're going to give an account now? And I mean, it's a little bit scary. I mean, it's more than a little bit scary, because this is our testing ground. This temporal world is where we are tested. Who are we? What are we? Are we truly men and women of God, or are we asleep at the wheel and letting the school bus go over the edge? I'm passionate for all of us to wake up. I'm passionate for all of us to hear the sound of the trumpet on the walls that says, warning, wake up and pray. Wake up and do something. Don't just sit back and say, oh my, this is terrible.
Right.
But do something And that's where we're at. I can talk about the historical parallels that are very recent, within our parents' generation into us, or I can say, and we do need to know those things, because otherwise there's no track record to go on. But if we know history and really know history, then we say, wow, history is repeating itself now. What can I do to turn back this evil tide? And we begin with prayer, and from there we go on into, being involved in our local school boards and our, in the life and the political life of this country.
Exactly.
And,
our lives are just a blip. I mean, a blink and they're over. So we got to make it count. I talk a lot when I go speak. You're not going to leave anything behind other than your legacy. And what did you do to advance the kingdom of God on this earth?
Yes.
And this isn't a numbers game. We don't have to have the most people to win. We just have to have the God of the universe on our side, fighting the battle for us. And, that requires being prepared, as you said, in the prayer closet, but you cannot stay there. You've got to get out, and you've got to move within the culture, and you've got to find a place to serve. And at the very least, as you mentioned, we vote, but there is so much more to be done than that. And everyone is gifted in a different way. I like to communicate with some of these lawmakers because the Father's given me an ability to do that. And some people don't like to do that, but my goodness, there's a myriad of things that can be done. And it's like you say, it all begins with just opening your eyes, waking up, and then, smelling the coffee, getting your marching orders, and get out there and do it.
Yeah. I have so many people say, what can I do? I just feel helpless. And I say, well, don't you have a crisis pregnancy center in your community? Go buy diapers, go buy newborn diapers and take them in. If you can't do anything else, take beyond your tithe, make a gift of diapers or a layette set or something, or go volunteer to counsel and learn how to do this. If you want to get really personally involved, the phrase, love them both, love the mother and love the child, and help the mother love the child.
Amen.
And so there is, on a personal level, and I think that's where we need to bring this in, is by our love we are known. It's not simply the anger that we feel at what certain people are doing to this country and the manifestation of evil within the government at this point. It is, what can I do personally? And what you can do personally, anybody can do, is be kind and find a way to be kind to those who are suffering. If we have millions and millions and millions of babies who have been aborted, that means there are millions and millions of women who have undergone this and who are suffering now. And the reason they are so vocal and so vociferous and
guilt
and angry, it is guilt. It is their guilt. And so what's the answer to that? It is the fact that Yeshua HaMashiach died for our sins. Every one of us has a sin. And the blood of our sacrifice, Yeshua, covers that sin. He forgives. He welcomes. He loves. He understands. He embraces. And he says, stand up now and live differently. Stand up and help someone who is going through what you went through. And maybe you didn't understand when you had an abortion. You didn't understand that this was a living human being. But now you do. Mm-hmm. So be forgiven and live for life. And, so many women need to hear that message, and then they will come with us and walk with us and say, Jesus forgave me for what I have done, and I want to help someone else. So
exactly.
There's no other answer.
There is no other answer. I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, the bottom line is we need to be reproducing life in whatever form that can take. That is the nature of who our God is. He is life, life everlasting. And so everything that we put our hands to do should be reproducing life. We're his image bearers, called out into the field to bring the kingdom and to bring hope and to let people know that there is a God, there is a King. He is alive and well, and He forgives and loves and extends mercy. All these things. And so well, we're almost done here, Bodie. We just an hour just flew by. And,
yes, it did.
I'm hoping, people have gotten a good perspective from you, what went on in World War II, the patterns and parallels that we're experiencing today, that we understand a little more about the root problem, and that we now take our marching orders and we go out and we do what God has called us to do. And I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your busy life and being on the program here with me. It's really special. Thank you so much.
And I love you, girl.
I know.
We're sisters of the heart.
We are.
And sisters of the DNA too. So
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, just before we close, I just want to mention to our viewers that your latest book was On the Mountain of the Lord, which you collaborated with Ray Bentley. And that was part of the Elijah Chronicles, and I'm guessing your next one's coming soon, I would assume.
It is. It's done, and it's in the hands of, the publishers. So, they'll schedule it. And, I'm really excited about it because it brings it home. It brings the message home and really shows where we're at. The working title is The Threshing Floor. The Threshing Floor. And that's book 2 of the Elijah Chronicles. But On the Mountain of the Lord is that's out, and it's recent, and I think it's a good one.
Well, great, So go out and buy it if you haven't already, and then you can buy her other 69 or 71 books.
Vienna Prelude would be the place to start, I think.
All right, you hear that, folks? Start with Vienna Prelude. Great book. Well, thanks again, Bodie, and maybe we can do this again some other time. But it's been a blessing, and I trust that people are really going to be blessed by everything that you shared.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much
again.
for asking.
Okay. All right, you guys. Thanks for joining us for this hour show, and I'll see you next time with my co-host, Jeff Morton. This is Dinah Dye with Returning to Eden. Shalom, shalom.